Hello, you guys. Welcome to my channel, All Things Militia, where I discuss a lot about what's going on in the political world, but also topics that pertain to everyday life in general. If you are subscribed to my channel, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate you. Don't forget, if you see a video that you like, hit that thumbs up button for your girl. Leave a comment down below because I'd like to get your thoughts on the topics I'm discussing. Share the video, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. You can do all of those things, and don't forget to subscribe. So today, you guys, I wanted to come on here real quick and talk about a topic of investigative journalism. Now, I don't know if I've ever shared this or not, but my first love was journalism. I always thought I would grow up and become a news reporter. I remember being like 4 and 5 years old, taking my grandfather's newspaper and standing in front of a mirror and just reading it as if I was a reporter. And later on in life, I, got involved in some public speaking competitions in high school, things of that nature. So speaking publicly has always been my first love. I also was an announcement clerk at my church. But one thing I notice about journalism nowadays is that it's very, very biased. And a lot of people that may watch my page would say that I'm biased because I speak a lot in favor of the right, and they would be right. And the only reason why I tend to lean the way that I've been leaning so far is because of how I saw the media practically attack President Trump. And after watching how the media was used regarding Muammar Gaddafi and seeing how the media was then targeting President Trump after he announced his run for president, I said, oh, this looks like the same thing all over again. There's an agenda behind this. But nevertheless, you guys, that does not mean that President Trump is without being criticized or without, critique. That does not mean that any one of us are without being corrected or without being critiqued. And if you recall a few months back, I think it was last year. Sometime, but it hasn't been a full year yet. When actually it was the July 4th weekend. I remember it was the July 4th weekend that the Department of Justice, if I'm not mistaken, came out and said that the case was closed on Epstein, that there weren't any, what did they call it? There weren't any clients or something. There wasn't a clients list or something like that. They came out and said, and it had MAGA very upset. Now, MAGA was upset with Trump, and they was like, oh, no, especially after President Trump made this comment.
Allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of Saturday?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Pam, can I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
So President Trump and his administration received a lot of backlash from his own supporters after he made that statement. Many people were not just willing to let that be brushed under the rug. And like I said, they came out on the 4th of July weekend last year, which when a lot of people are not really paying attention to the news on the weekend, and announced that they were going to close the Epstein case. And people called that out, and called out the fact that they were trying to close the case. And it was just, something that was a big deal because this man who was reportedly involved in child trafficking was also connected to a lot of high-powered people that were also reportedly involved in that activity. You had princes, reportedly, presidents, you had corporations, and even Hollywood. So people weren't willing to just let that slide under the rug. And just imagine if people would have just never said anything, then we wouldn't even had the files that have been recently released. And it wasn't until after President Trump's supporters called him out on that situation that the left-wing liberal media wanted to jump on board and started asking about the Epstein files. But then they got called out because people were like, well, you guys had Biden in office for 4 years, and y'all didn't bother to, press this issue that entire 4 years that he was in office. So now you're just using this for a political stunt. And so after President Trump was reportedly cleared from having any involvement with Epstein that was, illegal, then the media went crickets. So, but yeah, it's important to not be biased when reporting or calling people out if they're, not doing something right. And so I say that to say this: you have Candace Owens. Candace Owens, who is a more conservative voice, who was connected to the late Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was also a very influential conservative voice. He was assassinated about 6 months ago. And since his assassination, Candace Owens has been doing a lot of investigative journalism, trying to get down to the bottom of what led up to his assassination, who was involved in with his assassination, things of that nature. So here recently, she just started a series called The Bride of Charlie. And she's been receiving a lot of backlash and ridicule and criticism online because many people are saying that she's pretty much tearing down the very organization that Charlie Kirk worked so hard to build, TPUSA, and also that she's targeting his now widow during a grieving period. Now, you have a lot of other people that are in favor of her doing this, stating that Erica Kirk has been giving off a lot of phony vibes to them. Reportedly, she's not really coming across as a grieving widow, at least not publicly. And then you have the fact that they did reportedly have children together, but it was only days after his assassination that she was named the CEO of his company, and here recently have been given a defense position by the Trump administration. So a lot of people are wondering if Charlie Kirk was moved out of the way so that Erica Kirk could be elevated. Now, I'm just going to play a little bit of what Candace Owens has been saying about this situation.
All right, you guys. In today's episode of Everybody Grieves Differently, and by the way, I should say we are in like season 17, episode 4. The writers are running out of ideas and they're just putting up things that don't even make sense anymore. Yeah, well, on today's episode, President Trump has appointed Erica Kirk to the Air Force Academy's Board of Visitors. Now, if you would like to know how that further empowers this world-renowned widow who is definitely grieving, I will explain that to you. Is she qualified? Of course not even a little bit. Doesn't even matter. Also, I got to speak to you about something much more seriously. I have a hunch, a growing hunch, that Erica and Jeffrey Epstein may have crossed paths. Something is not sitting right with me about how she just keeps dancing around Jeffrey Epstein in her life. I am finding it increasingly difficult to believe that Erica just keeps coincidentally getting involved with countries and companies and schools that Epstein is involved with deeply. So I went ahead and messaged the PR team, legal team over at Turning Point USA with a very specific question pertaining to a modeling company.
So after President Trump's decision to appoint Erica Kirk to that position, many people criticized him for that, stating that she wasn't qualified and this was like a DEI hire. Now, in regards to Candace Owens, kind of like believing that Erica Kirk and Jeffrey Epstein's paths have maybe crossed, that comes after there were reports that Erica Kirk was over an organization or involved with an organization in Romania that dealt with children that was found to be trafficking children. And reportedly, she was removed or banned from that country after that was brought to light. So a lot of people are saying now the internet is being scrubbed of any information pertaining to that. And I don't know what's true or what's not. But the whole thing of it is if someone is defaming your character, you can sue them. Simple as that. If Candace Owens is overstepping her boundary and is defaming Erica's character, she can always just sue her, take it up in court. It wouldn't be Candace's first lawsuit. So I'm going to move on to Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is another person that Candace Owens was once connected to. She worked with him. I think it was the Daily Wire, if I'm not mistaken. She was fired from after not going along reportedly with their narrative. And so let's see what he has to say regarding Candace Owens' approach regarding Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk So, if Candace Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk casting aspersions at TPUSA and the people who work here, who worked with Charlie every single day, his best friends, to cast aspersions at Mikey McCoy and Andrew Colvin and Blake Neff and Tyler Boyer, and yes, at Erica Kirk, and to imply or outright claim complicity in a cover-up over Charlie's murder, to spew absolutely baseless trash implicating everyone from French intelligence to Mossad to members of TPUSA in Charlie's murder or a cover-up in that murder, then we, as people with a microphone, have a moral obligation to call that out by name. And the people who refuse to condemn Candace's truly vicious attacks, and some of them are speaking here, are guilty of cowardice. Tucker Carlson, it is not an excuse to go silent on Candace's targeting of TPUSA.
Okay, so Ben Shapiro was reportedly calling out Candace Owens for pretty much calling out TPUSA members and even Erica Kirk regarding covering up Charlie Kirk's assassination. He also made mention of Tucker Carlson. So Tucker Carlson is another investigative journalist. Both he and Candace both supported the MAGA movement. They played a very important role in President Trump becoming reelected because they were putting stuff out that we weren't seeing in the mainstream media. And so when you have Ben Shapiro state that, you know, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens should be called out, and they didn't make mention of this, but it was also stated that they should be denounced. Yeah, that's a pretty big problem, especially when you're at a event for Turning Point USA, a Charlie Kirk event. And if you know Charlie Kirk, he was all about speaking to people whether he agreed with them or not. He was more so speaking to people that he did not agree with. Okay, and it was all about, you know, just having a civil debate. So a lot of people were stating, you know, here we go with this typical trying to label people a certain way that doesn't fit your narrative. And I'll let Tucker Carlson explain more about that.
Meaningful, but I just want to say, I don't think I did. No, I'm just kidding. I watched it. I laughed. That kind of bitter, sardonic laugh that emerges from you when like Upside Down World arrives. When your dog starts doing your taxes and you're like, wait, it's not supposed to work this way. To hear calls for like deplatforming and denouncing people at a Charlie Kirk event, I'm like, what? This is hilarious. Yeah, this is hilarious. Actually, one of the clips I was listening to myself, thinking as I often do when I hear myself speak, which is never, because I never watch myself, but at these events they always play like the role of you. And I'm like, that guy is pompous. Woo! Sorry about that. We don't see ourselves clearly. But the prediction that, you know, at some point when Republicans took power again, which I did everything I could, you know, to help, and really felt that was important. I still think, you know, I was right. But I really thought that the impulse to deplatform people, or even to use the word platform as a verb, which it's not, it's a noun, don't steal my nouns, deplatform and denounce. Why haven't you denounced somebody else? The whole like Red Guard cultural revolution thing that we so hated and feared on the left that we did everything we could to usher in a new time where you could have an actual debate. I mean, this kind of was the whole point of Charlie Kirk's public life.
That was the whole point of Charlie Kirk's public life. He was all about having an open debate, whether he agreed with you or not, and he was changing a lot of people's minds, specifically the youth, because he would go on college campuses and speak to the youth regarding topics that affected us, our everyday lives. So it was interesting that Ben Shapiro wanted Megyn Kelly and others to denounce Candace Owens for what she was doing, because people want to make it like, okay, well, you can't speak on Erica Kirk, you can't speak on TPUSA because, you know, Erica's a grieving widow and this and that, and so you're out of line, you stepping over your boundaries. But as an investigative journalist, you're all about getting down to the bottom of things. So it's not being biased. Yes, she, you know, is a widow, and a lot of people would say she shouldn't have to deal with this. But the whole thing is if there's any form of defamation, she can sue, point blank and period, and bring it into it really quickly. So, but when you're doing journalism, you can't be biased, regardless of what a person may be experiencing or whatever. Like I said, in the real world, when a person has a spouse and they happen to turn up dead, one of the first people that are looked at or investigated is their spouse. So it's not far-fetched to do that, especially when there is much to gain. Okay, that's my personal opinion on that. But I wanted to end it off with something that Charlie Kirk himself had to say about asking questions, because it's important when you do journalism to ask questions. What, like I said, what, when, who, where, why, and sometimes how. You're just trying to get down to the bottom of it. So let's just see what he had to say regarding that.
Certainly, America is significantly underwriting the Israeli government $4 billion a year. We as American taxpayers deserve answers to this. We deserve answers. Also, if we're going to get into a regional or world war based on an intel failure, so, I mean, we pay for this. What are we buying, right? I got smeared as a Jew hater, an anti-Semite, and conspiracy theorist because I said exactly what I just said. And I refused to back down despite all the smears thrown at me, because I learned during COVID. I learned when they told us that it came from a bat in the Himalayas. I learned when they told us the vaccine was safe and effective. I learned when they told us that ivermectin was horse paste, that you better keep asking questions because it's the only thing that keeps us free.
You better keep asking questions because that's the only thing that keeps us free. And if you recall, when the Trump administration had decided to close the Epstein case last July, the reason why it was reopened and then we have those files that were released was because people kept asking questions. They kept pressing. Anytime you just remain silent and allow anything to be brought and put in front of you and go along with it, you're setting yourself up to be controlled. And so it's very important to ask questions, especially when you're involved with journalism. It's all about trying to get down to the truth. It's not about your feelings. It's not about a person's situation. It's about trying to get down to the truth. And just think about it, you guys. With people that have murdered people or have committed crimes, if we say, okay, this person committed a crime, but then they lost their mother, so we shouldn't ask them about the crimes that they committed, or we shouldn't question anything about them because they just lost their mother, then no one would be in jail for the most part. People go through things every single day, and no one is exempt from being questioned. And if a person is being defamed in any form of way, we do have laws where you can sue a person for defamation of character, and that will bring about discovery, which a lot of people don't want to sue if they, have some things that they don't want to be discovered. But at the same time, to smear a person just for asking questions, in my opinion, is not the way to go. Okay, because it's all about trying to get down to the facts. If you have someone that you lost, that you were close to in any form of way, you're going to want to get down to the facts, and you're going to want someone that's persistent and consistent with trying to get down to the facts. And just like Charlie Kirk stated, he learned during COVID, and we know during that period it was a lot of shenanigans going on. They were offering free vaccinations, which in my opinion, anytime the government offers anything for free, there's an agenda behind it. You're trying to act like you really care about the public's health, but Big Pharma has been ripping people off for decades with these overpriced drugs that are not really curing anything. Okay, so it was some things behind that. And then a lot of doctors that had been in practice for years and nurses were let go or even quit because they weren't able to practice in what was in the best interest of their patients, which is what they took the oath to do. Okay, you had a lot of drugs that were not being made available. There were drug shortages. So it was a lot of shady business going on. And the main thing that got me was when they gave the big pharma companies zero liability, meaning that if anything happened to a person, if they experienced an injury after getting the vaccine, they couldn't sue. So that right there alone told me everything I needed to know. Then they were holding lotteries in certain states like California, I believe, where they were giving people money, paying people to take the vaccine. Like, what is this about? And then we reportedly learned that there were more deaths due to the vaccine than the actual virus. But the media wanted to brush that under the rug. And when COVID first happened, you saw the media every single day, nonstop. We have this many more new cases, this many more new deaths. And they was trying to impose fear upon people, like really create an environment of fear, you know, to make people go take a vaccine that had just been produced, hadn't even stood trial and error. So yeah, it was a lot of shady stuff going on with that situation. And so it's very important as a society that we ask questions and we give pushback to people that are in authority, because you can't just allow anything to slide, because when you do, you're setting yourself up to be controlled. And so I'm going to end it there, you guys. If you like this video, give your girls a thumbs up, and I will see you later.